As we all know, the planet goes through cycles of quiet rebirth and expansion at times. We often see this if you're moon gazing, you'll see the phases of the moon. And what I want to press upon you today is that as you're thinking about moving forward in your business, as you're thinking about where you are today, because we're a few months into the year, I want you to start to think about not only these cycles, but be aware of what these cycles mean in your business. Because for many of us, when we think about what's happening in our business, we're thinking about the here and now. We're thinking about the emails we have to do. We're thinking about the work that has to get done. We're thinking about the work that maybe we haven't gotten done. And what happens is we don't necessarily take enough time for that inner reflection, that time where we sit back and maybe observe a little bit. Sit back and maybe take some time to reflect. So today is all about reminding you that it might be time for you to reflect. We're a few months into the year, and you may want to think about what's already transpired in your business. Now, for some of you, you may be like, this is pretty early, Stephanie, in the year. We just got started. We're only in March here. And I understand it is still the beginning. There's so many possibilities in this year. But what can happen at times is we start to kind of put our head down in our business. We start to just keep moving forward, working, that we don't take these breaths in our business, that we miss opportunities and miss opportunities not just to expand our business, but opportunities to contract things in our businesses, which will also equal growth. So, today, let's talk about those things. Let's talk about when and if you're in a moment of reflection, if and when you should be thinking about recharging and reassessing, and also thinking about some of these cycles and how you can make sure that you're waxing and waning as you're going through the year. So, first, let's just take a minute and think about the idea that is it time for you to recharge? Is it time for you to reassess? Yes, it might be early, but here's the thing. And this is one thing that I would probably say has been a big lesson for me this year is that I had big plans for this year. I know for many of you, when you think about January and February, you think about everything you want to get done. You think about all the programs you want to launch. You think about all the things you're going to organize and all the things you're going to do better. And when you start to approach the year, we're really kind of running on this momentum moment. We're running on this moment of, what can be done and then the possibilities. But what happens is when we start to turn the corner into February and March, the reality of the year starts to set in. And this has happened to me. I had so many things I was going to get done. And for me, the reality was I actually got sick this year. When I actually got sick, it slowed down my business. It made me reflect. It made me reassess. And the reason I'm talking about this today is because I don't want you to be in my shoes and something happens that makes you do this because it's very painful when you have to do it and when the moment makes you do it because you start to have a little bit of resistance. I want you to kind of learn from maybe my challenge this year and make sure you're taking the time to reflect and reassess. And one of the biggest things that I had to do is I had to decide what are really my priorities now. What are my priorities this month? Because what started to happen is I got so excited about everything I wanted to accomplish. I was so like running towards all these fun things that number one, I probably had a little bit too many projects open at the same time. Number two, I was strictly just running to the finish line. So therefore, I was all about how I could get everything done and maximizing everything. And then what I also kind of, I guess, had a little bit of a misstep on is that I overpromised to my clients. And oh, I can't tell you how painful that is. For anyone out there that's a coach, anyone out there that provides marketing services for clients, it can be so painful when you overpromise and you realize that you may not be able to deliver on those dates. You may not be able to meet those initial timelines. And what I had to do is I had to not just reflect on what happened, but I needed to take time to reflect on why it happened. Why did I go so gung ho, as they say? Why did I push so hard? And making sure that not only do I change my actions, but do I need to change my mindset on this year? Because if I was running faster than I really can, what often happens is you can stumble and fall. And that's what happened to me. Now, some of the stumbling and falling, like I said, was a little bit out of my control because I got sick. So, what can you do? You have to take some time off to take care of yourself. But the reality is, I didn't set my business up for any slowdowns. I didn't allow myself to have any flexibility for anything else to happen. I didn't create a flex plan like I was planning to do because I got so excited and in the moment. So I want to today just come into your ear if you're listening to this as a podcast and just creep into your day or just tap you on the shoulder if you're watching this as a replay and remind you to set in some of that flexibility. Because by putting in some of that flexibility, you'll not only be able to achieve many of the things you want to achieve, but you won't have to feel that jolting feeling of moving forward so fast that literally you're almost losing your balance. And that's one thing that I've been feeling this year. And I thought I'd do a session on it in case anyone else is feeling this year. So if you're watching this live or even as a replay, let me know in the comments. Have you felt like maybe you were running too fast? Have you felt like you've been pushing, and you really didn't take that time to reflect? The other thing I want to mention today is how important it is to recharge before you get exhausted. How important it is to reassess before it becomes such a big issue that you can't move forward or become so frustrating. And this has been another one of those things that I've been really working through this year. I really have been trying to get a better, I guess, handle on the idea that if I do start to feel pressure, if I do start to feel stress, if I do start to feel like for some reason, I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. Now I'm starting to address that right away. I'm trying to make sure that I create these recharge moments, in many cases, throughout my week. Because what can happen is I write my little to do list, I start working, I start knocking stuff out, and then all of a sudden I feel like, oh, I didn't get this done. What about this? Oh, I could do that. Then I get emails, I get calls, and my list of what needs to get done this week has just mushroomed out. So, what I start to do as a technique of mine is I'm starting to create my priority list. Now, for many of you, priority list is common. Many of us create these priority lists. But what I'm starting to do a little bit differently is I'm starting to say, if I need to recharge, if I need to reassess, I need to not only put a priority on my list on what I'm going to do in my business, but what is my priority this week that's going to help me recharge? What is my priority this week to make sure that I get back in balance? What am I going to do to make sure that not only do I get the work done, but I get the work done without being exhausted. I get the work done without taking that exhaust and stress into the next week, and making sure that a part of my priorities includes me. So, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, if you're feeling the stress of everything going on, what you may find is that you're not putting yourself on that priority list. And I wanted to today remind you to do that. All right. And then the last thing I want to talk about today, especially as we talk about the cycles of a business, especially as we talk about how at times our businesses are in huge growth modes and at other times our businesses are in these contracting modes. I want to talk about getting comfortable with these cycles. For many of us who live in different parts of the world, maybe you experience seasons. And what happens is you get used to the idea of, having a colder winter or having the rebirth and spring, or getting ready for the summertime and going out and enjoying, or even just the beauty of the fall. What can happen at times in our businesses is that we get a little bit stubborn. We start to feel like we don't want to accept the cycles of our businesses. We don't want to accept the fact that not every marketing campaign is going to be successful. Not every new service that we come out with is going to be the next it thing. And not every idea that we come out with is truly going to, you know, fly or take flight like we expect. And what I want to do today is remind you of that, especially as you're in the beginning parts of the year. Because what can happen is that momentum that we started with will start to slow down because the reality of roadblocks, the reality of challenges, the reality of the things that come our way that keep us from moving at the rate that we want to move at start to materialize in this kind of third and fourth month of the year. So, what I want you to do is not create a resistance to the idea of these cycles. I want you to embrace them. And I also want you to look at them in a more positive light. And the reason I bring that up is because when we think about expansion versus contraction, most of us are like, we of course want to expand. I want to grow. I want to help more people. I want to reach more people. I want to expand my business. Or maybe you're in a place where you want to have additional locations, or maybe you want to build a team. But the reality is, most expansion will require a level of contraction first. Most of the time, when you are trying to do more, you're going to need to prioritize. And that prioritization means there's going to be a contraction of what's on your list. It means that everything that you originally planned to do will not get done because something new has come on your plate. Or you've decided that something else is more important. So, what I want you to think about as you're moving forward is don't be so afraid of the cycle of contraction. Don't worry so much of the cycle of contraction, and don't see that as a problem in your business. I want you to see it as if it's a phase of the moon or as if it's the seasons in the place that you live in. Because often the contraction will prepare you for that new rebirth. That contraction will allow you to even have a greater rebirth. And that contraction often may help you see that you are actually spreading yourself too thin. And let me give you two examples before we wrap up. One of my favorite examples, and this is something that I've been living and breathing and feeling and also helping with a lot of my clients with, is for many of us, we think we need more services to better support our customers. We think we need more products, more options. But what I've been seeing a lot lately is many businesses are finding more success from streamlining. What that means is that's a cycle of contraction. That means instead of selling more, instead of maybe even selling what you've sold before, why not identify your best products, your best services? Why not focus in on those and make them better and get more people to buy what you already offer, what already performs well, what already gets results, instead of expanding into new markets? And I bring this up because for many of us, we have small teams. For many of us, maybe some of you out there raising your hand and you're like, Stephanie, I'm just a solopreneur. I have no team. And you can run an amazing, huge, successful business, even with a small or as a solopreneur. But you will be faced with the challenge of when do I expand or when do I contract for growth? So therefore, don't worry if at times that contraction is needed, because often it is what's going to help you propel you forward and often help you achieve what you need. And then the last example I just want to give you, because this has been a fun one that I've been exploring, I've been running through, and I've been learning a lot about, is not just the expansion contraction kind of cycle, but what expansion and contraction means even in my day-to-day work, even in what I'm doing. One thing that we've started to do is started to really bring on additional team members. Now, we only bring on team members in small amounts, just a few hours each week. But one thing I've started to do is, instead of really all the work being on my shoulders, is spreading out or distributing that throughout the team. And what's great about that is it now allows us to help more people. What's great about that is it does allow us to have really kind of experts in different areas of what we offer so that they can be resources for our clients. They can be available, know our clients is inside and out, like I do. And therefore, I don't have to be in every meeting. I don't have to be on every email. I don't have to be involved in everything. Others in my team can keep things going, which is a beautiful thing in a business. And if for any of you that are doing a little bit of expansion or hiring, this is such a wonderful place to be in. But the challenge of it is there's also a level of contraction because as I bring on additional people, I have less time because my time that I was initially maybe giving to the clients, because we have somebody on the team that can work with the clients, it's great. It sounds like it's a complete freedom of my time. But the reality is, I'm still going through a cycle of contraction. And I believe this cycle is not going to last forever. I believe this cycle is going to be something that I'm going to manage through over time. But I have to recognize that this is where I am and that eventually this will fade and I'll go into a new cycle. But the reason I'm in this cycle of contraction is what I'm finding is I have to spend a good amount of time with my team. My team become experts? How can my team get stronger? How can people really jump into a system that I've built over years if I don't train them, if I don't teach them, if I don't support them, and if I don't help them be great at what they're doing? So, therefore, that time I thought I was going to get back in my schedule is going to be delayed because that's not the cycle I'm in. I'm in a cycle of contraction. And therefore, I have to accept that cycle, embrace that cycle. And what I'm really starting to do now is I'm changing my mind about how, you know, I'm running my business probably for the next 30 to 45 days is that I'm going to be in a place where I'm going to have less time to do some of the things I'm doing, but knowing that this is just a season, this is just one of my cycles. And ultimately, by building what I'm building, by planting the seeds in my business, by helping my team expand and grow, ultimately, I'll be in that new cycle of rebirth. So, I hope for you today's session was a little inspiration to maybe weather the storm if you're in a cycle of contraction, to help you embrace some of the challenges of running through these cycles, and also help you make any mindset shifts that are needed to make sure that if you're in maybe that winterized version of your business and you're preparing for that next rebirth, that you're doing everything you can to prepare, to dedicate the time, and to understand this cycle because it's a beautiful place to be, even though sometimes it can be a little bit painful, because we understand that just like spring goes into summer, just like fall goes into winter, and as we're doing right now, going into winter and into spring, your business will do the same, and that rebirth is coming your way. Right? Thank you, everyone, for joining us live. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. Or if you're watching this as a replay, we love, love, love having you. And I can't wait to see you on our next episode of Spark.